As more countries across Europe and the world begin vaccinating all 5 to 11-year-olds against coronavirus, parents in favour of their young children being jabbed are keen for Britain to follow suit.
And one mum, Alice Columbo, concerned by the rising infection rates here, travelled with her 9-year-old daughter for 13 hours. They drove 800 miles across Europe to Italy. Now, she set off from Tunbridge in Kent, driving through the French Alps, stopping only for toilet breaks, before reaching Milan in the search of a coronavirus vaccine for her child.
Well, we can speak to Alice now, who is still in Milan, where her daughter will receive the second dose of the COVID vaccine later on today. Dr. Amir is here in the studio with us as well. Good morning to you, Alice. Thank you for joining us this morning. Firstly, can you just explain why you were able to drive to Italy to get this vaccine? Because some of our viewers may be a little bit confused by that.
Yes, absolutely. Good morning. I'm in the very fortunate position of having dual citizenship, as is my daughter, and as an Italian citizen, she was eligible for the vaccine over here.
OK, so you were able to go there and get the vaccine. It's one thing to be eligible to do it, but it's another thing to drive all that way in order for her to have it. What compelled you to want to do that?
If I'm honest with you, I am much happier running the minimal risks associated with the vaccine, and I appreciate that it is a risk. Every vaccine carries a risk with it. But we know about those risks, and we know what to do in the unfortunate cases where people do have a reaction to it, rather than roll the dice with the virus itself. There is still so much we don't know about the virus, particularly its long-term effects. And certainly looking at the last set of statistics that I've looked at, which were the ones from the ONS out at New Year, we had 1 in 15 primary school children off school. Sorry, I beg your pardon. We had 1 in 15 primary school children positive in that last week of term before Christmas. And quite frankly, I didn't want to take the risk of her getting the virus and potentially suffering from long-term effects that we don't know about, rather than run the very minimal risks associated with her getting the jab.
And you took the decision to drive to try and take as much precaution as possible in keeping safe, so you weren't mixing in any way on public transport. That's why it became such a pilgrimage, isn't it?
Absolutely so. I wanted to keep her as safe as possible. We know the virus is circulating. When we left the UK, Omicron had just started to become as virulent as it has become, and the case numbers had just started creeping up. And I really didn't want to run the risk of her catching it on the way over, because obviously at that point she wouldn't have been able to have the jab.
And we've seen, haven't we, that different governments, well, you're an example of it, are taking different approaches to when they approve, different age groups, what they say needs to be done about vaccination. And we've all been talking about Novak Djokovic and the Australian stance on his position and his decision not to be vaccinated and all that surrounds that. Do you think our government should be tougher, or do you understand some people who don't feel like you and want the right not to be vaccinated?
I absolutely believe in choice. I appreciate that for every one parent who thinks like me, you'll probably find about 10 who think I'm completely loopy. And I think parents should be given the choice. Ultimately, I've had the jab myself. I've had all 3 doses. Why would I not want to give that protection to my daughter? And I really think the UK government should be able to give me that choice to take an informed decision as a parent.
OK. For the time being, Alice, thank you. Dr. Amir is in the studio. So COVID vaccines for 5 to 11-year-olds are approved in certain circumstances if there's an underlying health condition or they're living with a vulnerable person, aren't they?
That's right, yes. So in the UK, the MHRA has actually approved the COVID vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, in a smaller dose for 5 to 11-year-olds, for all 5 to 11-year-olds. The JCVI has recommended it for only those who are vulnerable or living with someone vulnerable. The data around that is not very clear. They say they're observing it to see whether there's any risks in that 5 to 11-year-old. And the risk they refer to is this risk of heart inflammation in younger people. But 5 million 5 to 11-year-olds have been vaccinated in the US, and there haven't been any cases of heart inflammation. So scientists are arguing it is actually safe.
I would say that some people, and I've had this argument made to me, would say yet.
Well,
that's the problem with the vaccination, that we don't know, just in the same way as we don't know with COVID. We didn't know for a long time some of the other implications.
Well, actually, we do know with regards to myocarditis, because in older children where we saw it happened within about 4 weeks or so. Right. So we've seen 5 to 11-year-olds get vaccinated. That time period has passed and they haven't had that inflammation. I think the mum here is right. Parents want to be given a choice, and whether they choose to vaccinate their child or not is up to them.
Does that work, though, in terms of public health? Because having a choice about vaccination means that you don't get the public immunity that protects those that are vulnerable.
No, it doesn't. But the vulnerable are already approved to get it, and the other children can have that individual protection. The problem with 5 to 11-year-olds in this country at the moment is that there is no protection at all in schools. There's no mask wearing, there's very minimal ventilation, and
but they are at minimal risk from the virus as well.
But they're not at no risk, Ben. That's the problem. And we don't know the exact risk of COVID in children. And we've seen an increased number of children go into hospital last week alone with COVID. And we've got over 100,000 children in the UK with long COVID.
So would you like to see the government move up the rollout for 5 to 11-year-olds?
I would like to see the JCVI recommend it. And if they're not doing that, I want to see clear evidence as to why they're not doing that.
Alice, I wonder if you've had any reaction from your daughter's school friends' parents as well to the fact that you've done this?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, as I said, for every parent who thinks like me, there are probably about 10 who think differently. And I've actually been quite surprised. A lot of the parents that I've spoken to when they knew what we were thinking of doing were actually very against it, having had the jab themselves. And that is a stance that I really don't understand. If you feel confident and safe to have the vaccine yourself, and as your doctor has said, the amount of reaction in this age group from the vaccine is very low. We know about it. We don't know about the long-term impacts of long COVID in children. I'd much rather give my daughter the protection that the vaccine offers, and I don't really understand why other parents who themselves have had the vaccine wouldn't do the same. OK.
Well, Alice, we appreciate you joining us this morning to explain your position. And, of course, as you say, you had the choice to be able to do that because you have dual citizenship. But thank you for joining us.